on the group. There we go. And if I have any sort of valuable experience or knowledge to impart on the group, I'd be happy to share that with you. But I'll just start with just really high level about Mattamy. So Mattamy Homes is North America's largest privately held home building company. We operate in 4 divisions in Canada and about 14 in the United States. So all told, depending on the year, we will deliver anywhere from sort of 8 to 10,000 homes across North America. It was founded right here in Toronto. It's a really cool story. Like it's like a true Canadian entrepreneurial success story. It was founded by a man named Peter Gilgan, who's still very active in the company, but he was a corporate controller for a small home builder in his, I think he was in his like late 20s, and he saw an opportunity for himself to grow this thing and really like started with one house and has built it to this scale across North America. So I feel very fortunate to be a participant in that. So that's a bit about the organization. In Toronto, we've divided the business by build form. So we have 2 Toronto divisions. One's called Mattamy Homes Urban, and they look after all of the mid-rise and high-rise developments. And it's sort of the growing business, I would say, for us. It's kind of a funny time in the condo market right now, but that's in a lot of ways like perceived as the future area for growth for Mattamy. And then the low-rise business, which is what I'm responsible for on the construction operations side, and that's the business that Lana mentioned at the introduction. We've got operations from sort of Pickering to Kitchener to Bracebridge and Barrie, and a fairly large geography. We're delivering approximately 2,400 homes a year to across many communities to many families. So it's a really, I'll just say like it's a really dynamic place to work. It's a really exciting place to work. I have the privilege of leading a really large, talented team. I would say that my role as vice president of construction, if I could put it under like 3 really big buckets where I hold accountability, it's around production and production operations. So sort of all things home building. For a business this size, we'll have anywhere from like sort of 1,000 to 1,700 houses under construction at any given time. And there's a huge network of suppliers and municipalities and internal staff that we try and keep organized and in sequence to make sure that we deliver on what we say we're going to deliver to for our customers and back to the business. So that's that's sort of one big bucket. Obviously, lots underneath that. The other piece is around sort of quality and customer experience. It's one thing to build the houses. It's another thing to build them well and to make sure that the people who are fortunate enough to buy them from us are getting what they paid for and getting it to a quality standard that's fitting an organization our size. And then the last piece is, I would say, is sort of like a budget component, and sort of to deliver this much scale across the city of Toronto. I'm sort of the steward of about $160 million in, we call them soft costs, like indirect spend. So that's sort of the resources that I have at my disposal to staff the projects and manage the projects. And so that's sort of like what I'm personally accountable for, is making sure that the 2,400 houses a year that we've sold get delivered when they're supposed to be, and delivered in a way that's in keeping with homeowners' expectations. But because the position that I hold, I get to participate in a lot of really interesting parts of the business. I get to have a big say in sales strategy, and I get to have a big say in product design, and I get to have a big say in sort of culture and brand, and it's a really cool job. Like I feel really privileged, to be quite honest, every day that I get to come and sit in the chair that I do and work with the people that I do. And I certainly don't take it for granted for a second, but I didn't start here. I certainly didn't start in this job. I started, as sort of Lana mentioned at the beginning, like very innocently in this business. I had no intentions, I think, when I was younger, of ever getting into construction. I was a second-year undergrad student in ERS, and I was really just looking for a summer job. And for whatever reason, I was really committed to finding a job in manual labor. Like I wanted to be, I kind of wanted to break from school for the summer. I wanted to do something outside. I wanted to get some fresh air. I wanted to do something physical. And I was just fortunate, like through sort of happenstance, to have like a 6 degrees of separation connection to somebody who worked at Mattamy, and I got a job as a summer laborer, and I did that through my summer from my second year to my third year, and then Mattamy was really good to me while I was in university, and they let me stay on part-time through the school year. So what I was able to do through school is I was able to set my schedule up. So I would load up Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays with class, and then I would work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I think that at that time in my life, it helped build in a really good discipline for me, and it also helped me keep employed through the year, so that I didn't I never sort of had any lull between like school and work, and was able to, it's school's expensive enough. It was certainly expensive back then. It's more expensive now, but I like everybody needed some resources to get myself through. And um, I I finished university, and I thought that that was kind of going to be the end of my labor work. And I had convinced myself through university that I wanted to be an accountant. So I was taking some business courses at UW, because one of the beautiful things about the ERS program that I was in is it gave you lots of latitude to take courses all over the school, and I fully took advantage of that. I took some business courses, and I took some history courses, and I took some fun courses, and but I came out, I thought, really well rounded. But I thought that the best place for me to go work was in accounting, and I don't know why I thought that, but I thought that it would be a good career path for me. And I I quit Mattamy after I graduated school, and I went and worked at RIM for like really like a cup of coffee, to be quite honest. I was working there for a couple weeks through the summer, and I was working in their accounts payable department, and it was kind of the worst job imaginable, to be very honest. It was so like mundane, and I was stuck, and I think I'm not really uh, meant to be sitting at a desk all day. It's just not in my nature. But I got a call from someone who worked at Mattamy, who had told me about some organizational changes that had happened, and they'd been recently promoted into a new job, and they wanted to know if I wanted to come back as a laborer at full-time hours. And like, just the difference between what I was working before is I was getting paid like student hours, like 12.50 an hour at the time, and this job was going to have me back, and I think it was like 19 or $20 an hour. Like, it was, at the time, seemed like enormous money. And I was having a sort of a really bad day on a nice day in July inside, and I thought, absolutely, like, I'll come back. I'll come back and I'll labor. And I resigned that day, and I started back at Mattamy back on the labor crew the following week, and I kind of never looked back. I worked as a laborer from that point on, probably for like another probably 10 months or 12 months. And then I was getting to a place where I knew that I needed to do something beyond what I was doing. Like, I still had ambitions, and I knew I wanted to put my schooling to work, but I knew I probably wasn't doing that, sort of like sweeping floors and like running heavy equipment and things like that. So I asked if I went to our construction manager. We had this piece of equipment at the time. It was called a hydrovac, and a hydrovac's like a really it's a combination of a vacuum and a pressure washer, and we use it to fix water valves on our construction sites. And I thought that if I could get the job to be in charge of running the hydrovac, this would give me an opportunity to visit all the construction sites that Mattamy had, and it would give me a chance to make a few dollars more an hour. And that was really kind of my motivation for doing it. I thought, if I can get to know some more people, and if I can make a little bit more money, I might get my foot in the door to another opportunity somewhere. And when I asked for the job, and the reason the job was available is because somebody was leaving. So they said, my construction manager said to me at the time, he said, "I thought you were going back to school." And I said, "No, I'm not going back to school. I mean, maybe someday, but I don't have any short-term plans to go back to school." And they said, "Oh, well, we thought we have some opportunities that might be better than running the hydrospace. We're actually looking for some junior supervisors on one of our job sites in Milton." And I share the story. There's kind of like three things I want to tell you. So kind of three moments in my career that I just kind of took a little bit of a chance on myself, and it kind of opened the door to way more than was possible. Like, I put my hand up for that sort of a labor, job on a hydrospade, because I thought it would give me some more exposure. But what it ended up doing was getting my foot in the door, like, into real construction management. And so I joined the site team. It was my first job as as a supervisor. I got the white hard hat, and I remember they paid me $55,000 a year. It was $55,000 a year with a salary. And I thought I was like the richest person in the world. Like coming out of school, like I never made sort of more than like 39 or $40,000 a year, and it was always hourly work. And now I was going to make this salary, and I was going to make a vehicle allowance, and like I thought my world was set. And I did that job probably for 4 years or so through really interesting times in construction. Like it was like through the 2008 financial crisis, if anyone's familiar with sort of what went on there in housing, like really disruptive time. Really fortunate to kind of keep working through that. I found myself at this kind of crossroads again after like four years in that role where I knew I wanted to do more. I knew I had capacity to do more. I was getting myself to a place where I was like pretty confident in the role that I was in, and there was an opportunity to move into the office. We have a procurement team in our business, and the procurement team's responsible for sourcing work and budgeting work and awarding work to our contractors. And I convinced myself that if I could get myself on the procurement team, I could get this. My experience from the construction site would be so invaluable to me, and I could make sure that the sites got the suppliers that they needed and that they got work awarded when they needed, and I could kind of save the day. And I came into the office in this job, and I kind of within I'm gonna say like 3 or 4 weeks, I knew I'd made a really big mistake. Like I'd signed up for the wrong job. I was so unhappy in the work I was doing. I'd come from like a really like active place, kind of on my feet all day, solving problems through the construction process. And now I was like sitting at a desk for sort of 10, 11 hours a day. And I was kind of in one of those moments like, oh no, I made a terrible, terrible mistake. One benefit though, I did meet my wife through that process, so it's not all bad. I think that it was definitely worth coming into the office. But I think what it did do, it did a couple of things for me. One, it helped me meet my wife, which was great, but it gave me some exposure outside of the function that I was working in. So like, although I learned like kind of quickly that maybe it wasn't the right place for me to work, it did help me learn that the business and the system that the business operates in is like way more complex than I had previously appreciated. I sort of through that I got to learn and meet lots of folks in different functional areas. I got to meet folks from our planning department. I got to meet folks from our land department. I got to meet folks from our design team, and I got to meet folks from the architecture team. And I think I sort of it really kind of rounded me out. And I was so fortunate that the organization didn't just sort of cast me aside at the time. I went to my boss at the time and kind of told them the struggles I was having with the new role, and we found a really good landing spot for me to go back to the site. So I left that job after sort of 9 or 10 months, but I quickly got promoted on the job site after that. I think the reason I was able to get promoted through that is because the exposure that I had through those 9 months in the office had made me way more well-rounded and way more impactful on the job site. So I took on what we call it a builder job here, and it's really like it's like a super like a project manager's job. And I worked in Milton and I worked in Oakville on some really cool projects that were very high profile for the organization for about 5 years. And then I was at I loved that job. I still love that job. I had a really cool opportunity this morning to chat with some folks who are doing that job right now, and I still kind of I have a real I don't know excitement for what they get to do every day. They get to show up and I don't know deal with a really unique workforce. They get to do something really tangible and real. Like there's such like there's like it's almost very tactile what they get to deliver at the end of the day. And I was having a lot of success in that. I did it for sort of 3 or 4 years. I was getting plenty of accolades, and there was a really clear career path for me into sort of bigger and bigger roles in construction management. But it was sort of 2017 and 2016, and I was in between projects. One had wrapped and one was just about to start. And I had this kind of summer without work. And some construction companies and some industries, that's when you get laid off. At Mattamy, this organization's really good to keep people employed through some of those gaps. What I did with that gap is I started kind of wondering, like, what do I want to do? I'm now at a place in my life where I've sort of 10 years of construction experience. I've got really transferable, marketable skills. Um, and I know what I want to do in the long run. And what I really want to do in the long run is really what I'm doing today. So I was like, how do I get there? And I started exploring some MBAs, and I kind of did a bit of a tour around sort of all the universities that were in the Toronto area. I went and looked at Schulich, and I went and looked at McMaster had a program, Laurier had a program. I ended up there's some online ones that I was kind of like not that interested in, but I went through the application process at U of T, and like it just kind of caught. And I shared with Mattamy what I was interested in doing. Mattamy was really supportive of it. They didn't pay for it, but they did give me the time that I needed to do it while I was working. And I think that moment was probably for me um, like really the catalyst to what I'm doing today. It rounded me out in ways like I can't really describe. It paired what I knew about construction ops and home building processes with like a better business sense. And I've graduated in 2018. And since 2018, I've been off the job site, now back in the construction office. And I've been taking on a series of like bigger and bigger sort of organizational and leadership roles since that time. I did some project management work for some communities in the Toronto area. For a period of time, I ran our warranty operation, which was kind of a cool experience. We've got about 120 people and uh, $18 million a year to spend on a really comprehensive warranty program that we put all of our customers through, which was really good exposure for me. And then as that was going along, the person who was doing the job I'm currently in was making plans to retire. And this individual had been with the organization for 37 years, like a real, construction's a small industry, but this individual was like extremely well respected and extremely well known, but had reached a point in his life where he was looking for a little more time to himself. And it was presented to me as an option to backfill that. And the organization helped me to kind of get into that seat. And that's kind of where I am now. Now I'm sort of doing the job as I mentioned to you. So like that's kind of my experience, and like I sort of like the things I've done to get here. Certainly lots of things along the way, but I guess I'll just share like the reason I sort of tell you those kind of three moments, like putting my hand up for a different labor job, coming into the office, and going doing an MBA, is that there's been a couple moments in my career where I've put myself in sort of uncomfortable positions where I've kind of pushed myself to do something beyond what I was currently doing. And the outcomes have been really positive for me. They're not all positive. Like there's definitely some misses in there and over the course of my career, and there's been some downs, and I've taken some lumps along the way. But I've never been afraid to kind of take a chance on myself and put my hand up when the opportunity was right. And it's led to some really, really good results. And I think it's helping me to be um, I think successful in the role that I'm in now, but it's certainly comfortable in it as sort of the weight of the big responsibility sits on my shoulders. But that's kind of the run through of how I got to where I am. Man, I don't know how where you want me to
Yeah,
go from there. I mean,
that's amazing.
yeah,
I enjoyed hearing that story. And it's yeah, so cool to see that full circle moment. And here you are talking with students and you were once in their shoes. It's so
yeah.
cool. We're gonna open the floor up to Q&A. I think that now would be a good time for that. Folks in the room, if you want to put on your camera if you're comfortable, or come off mute and ask a question or put it in the chat, whatever is best for you. We've got lots of time to get some good back and forth with Andrew. So give you guys a couple minutes to gather your thoughts. We do have some pre-submitted questions that we can draw from to kick off. And you were just talking about kind of betting on yourself, Andrew, and sort of the taking the chances. And we had a question um, about, and this is kind of how it's phrased. It says, when we are talking about being open to new opportunities, people can be nervous about taking those risks. What advice would you have for taking those risks?
Yeah.
What do you think has allowed you to do that? Yeah, what would you say to someone that's feeling that hesitation?
I would say that you probably don't get to have any growth in your life if you don't take some chances on yourself. Like you'll just if you're apprehensive about uncertainty, you probably won't get where you need to go or want to go. Like the my experience has been that um, like doors certainly open for people, but sometimes you have to sort of nudge your way through them a little bit. Like there's, you do have to be a bit of an advocate for yourself and your own ambitions and your own plan. It's a competitive labor environment, and there's not everybody kind of knows your capacity or your abilities or your intentions if you don't share it.
Mhm.
And there's a couple ways that you can do it. I do see people, just a couple words of caution. Like I do see people all the time to put their hand up to do things, but then at the same time are kind of unwilling to do the extra things to make themselves successful in those things. So you have to pair those things together. Like if you want to try something new, like try it before you're asked, or sort of demonstrate that you're pursuing it in your own way. Um, I've I guess like this the scenario I'll give two like I had somebody come and see me a little while ago who wants to get into construction management, and I asked them what they're doing to on the side to get themselves ready for it, and they kind of didn't have an answer for it. Like they're
Mm.
like, oh, what am I doing for it? Oh, well, I set a meeting with you, and I was kind of hoping that by just meeting you, like that's it, I'm done. And like conversely, I've met similar individuals who will come to me and say, like, I really want to get into this, and I've been taking this night course in construction management at Conestoga College, or I've been doing this thing on Saturdays, or like they say, okay, here's somebody with a plan and ambition and doing extra. Like those are the people that like you want to help them get to the next
Mhm.
place. So you can kind of uh, yeah, you can be very impactful in your own journey just by taking extra on.
Fair. Yeah. Well, and if you're gonna stretch and grow, there's likely, yeah, skills that you're gonna have to work on in the
Yeah, yeah,
meantime to
yeah,
comfortable with that, taking
yeah,
that leap. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
great point. Yeah. And yeah, thanks so much, Nahal, for your message of thanks in the chat and for joining while you could. Um, okay, other questions. And yeah, folks, feel free to put your questions in the chat or come off mute. We'd love to hear from you directly. Um, you talked a little bit about your role in managing teams and certainly have a lot of experience with that. And this is, I think, the first time I've seen this specific question. But somebody was asking how you keep yourself and your team motivated at work. Um, yeah.
How do I keep myself and my team motivated at work? I try and keep my team anchored around uh, big goals that are bigger than they can achieve by themselves. I think that's really important. Like I say things like we're building 2,400 homes, and there's families and behind all of that, and you have to find some way to kind of weave the individual contributions into the big picture. Because if you
Mhm.
can't do that, then people just feel like they're just toiling, and like
Sure.
they're not contributing to something bigger. And like that's not true. Like, of course, nobody's just toiling. Like it's all part of something much larger. So I try and keep things light, and I try and keep things cordial so that people feel like they're coming into like a safe and inviting space where they want to be. Um, uh, there's you can I'm always trying to find this balance between like pressure because we do push a lot in this organization and lots of businesses. There's pressure, like with compassion. So it's a bit of a
Yeah.
juggle to make sure that you're I don't know, pushing people to do things that they might otherwise not be able to do, but doing it in a way that they feel like they're supported and cared for. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a big part of it. And then the other thing I do is I really try and give the people around me autonomy. Like I have this real luxury in the role that I have now that I get to, by and large, choose who's on the team. And I choose people who are self-starters, who have sort of like good moral compasses. I choose people that are bright, who you can trust. And I find if you surround yourself with people like that, you can give them really long leashes to do the right thing. And people feel rewarded with autonomy. Like I find that that's a real motivator for people if people feel like they've got space to make decisions and space to be creative and space to explore and the confidence to put their hand up if they see a way that things could be improved. Certainly not perfect at it, but that's kind of that's how we try and keep the group inspired
Yeah.
to live beyond just today and the task. And yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I would echo that too in my personal experience. I think some of the best managers that I've had have kind of taken on the almost like an athletic like sports coach kind of sphere of like they'll push you but with love, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, and it's exciting when you when you're given the chance to work a little bit more independently and come up with those solutions.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. This is sort of in that same vein, but you emphasize the importance of the people you surround yourself with. And another student asked, how have the teams you worked with influenced your career, which you have kind of spoken to, and what do you think are the key traits of a successful team? Um, you've I think probably touched on parts of this, but if there's
yeah.
anything else you want to add.
Um, Successful traits. I think a successful, like that's a that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think it's really important to have balanced teams. I think that as one of the things that I learned when I came into the office, and I found that like, coming up, construction's like a really like male dominated space. It's changing. But it remains sort of like different from other industries. It's and when I first started, it was like very like tough. It's still tough, but like it was like tough in ways that are like kind of unacceptable today. Like I think there's been
Mhm.
sort of the same reckoning and construction as there has been in a lot of industries for all the right reasons. But what I found coming into uh, the office was that the teams they had much more diversity on them, like diversity of opinion, diversity of gender, diversity of background. And I found that those are like really high functioning teams when you can get that right. You just get broad perspective from everybody. And we live in a really diverse world, and we live in you know, in the communities that we live in, and to think that you could be singular in your approach to how you solve problems is really narrow-minded. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I think that that's probably like one attribute that you need to be considerate of when you're trying to
Mhm.
make teams. Like have people at different ages, have people at different stages of their careers, have people from different backgrounds, have people with different perspectives. Encourage them to share those things, like create safe spaces and good forums for people to air those things, and um, yeah, you'll get further.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope that answered that student's question. And I see Tiffany, a career advisor at UW, is in the session today. And thank you, Tiffany, for putting in some questions in the chat to that she thinks will help her help students. I love that. You're attending the session for such altruistic um, intentions. So Tiffany is asking, and what do you think was the most important factor that helped you build lasting relationships at Mattamy Homes, even when you weren't sure if construction was the right path for you first? That's a great question,
That's a
Tiffany.
great question. I think it's kind of a cheap answer, but I think there's something there. Like you kind of have to be authentic in how you carry yourself. Like
Mhm.
it's really basic tenets. Like like treat people well and care about them and care about the things that you do. And if you do those things, like even if you're not sort of maybe you're in a place where you're not gonna you kind of know you're not gonna last forever, or maybe it doesn't fit with your what you want to do with yourself. But if you do it with care, particularly of the people around you, um, people will remember you and look out for you. You kind of get what you give in this world, and like that would be my advice. I think that's part of how I was able to have doors open for me is that like I think back to some of the jobs that I had. It was like I didn't love like fetching coffees and folding plans at the plans table, but I didn't know that it helped with a small component. I did it with some attention and care. I showed up on time. I was good to the people who I didn't like scoff at
The lowly jobs.
yeah,
Yeah.
lowy jobs, like I knew I didn't want to do this forever, but I was okay to do it for a period of time. And I think if you're in a space where you're giving like that and you're not getting back or you're not getting recognized or there's like it's unappreciated, then you're in the wrong spot. And then you're sort of empowered to go and make a change for yourself. So
Yeah, I also want to echo that too, because I started off, so as I said in the very beginning, I worked for the environment advancement team, and I was a UW student myself, and went through the co-op program and had many of those jobs where you feel like, okay, I'm organizing a storage room, or I'm like
yeah,
printing documents, whatever
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's that attitude that you bring to those roles. And luckily I had a lot of fortune in working for the University of Waterloo on a lot of my co-ops. And my colleagues were really great about um, pointing out opportunities to advance. And yeah, so of course, if you're in like Andrew said, in a place where you're not going to be appreciated for the effort you're putting in,
yeah.
and there doesn't seem to be a desire to invest in talent, then that's a different story. But yeah, I'm gonna ask Tiffany's other question, and thanks again for putting that in the chat. So you took the initiative to ask for opportunities and put your hand up for construction management. How would you advise students to approach asking for a responsibility or opportunities, especially early in their careers? And I hear this question and I can kind of hear some of the students that I've connected with, their voices sort of saying like, how can they like justify asking for more, or how should they position that ask? Yeah, without seeming maybe ungrateful for what they're currently doing. Just
Yeah.
yeah, like how would you approach that kind of conversation and put yourself in the best position to I don't know, be taken seriously or yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a lot more informal than maybe we think it is. Like I think that you've you've got to find some mentors and people who some sort of aspirational folks around you that and so I would start there and then I kind of go reach out to them for their story a bit and their journey and like kind of what they did that worked or didn't work. Like everyone's got stories about like skin knees along the way. Like I did this, but it really blew up on me. Or um, the other thing is just to make sure that you're doing what you're doing really well. Like that's sort of the biggest gap I see when people are putting their hand up for things is that they've lost sight of sort of what the ask of today is. And I think that this is like we're all inspired to do more and to do next. And if you've got a university education, you've come this far in your career, you've got it takes a lot to get that far, period. Like to get yourself into a university like University of Waterloo, to be able to get yourself into a co-op placement. Like you've done all these things and you might find yourself doing something kind of like kind of we were talking about earlier, kind of like menial or kind of mundane, but that's more important than you might think. So just do the thing that you're being asked to do it really well. Start there, and then ask the right questions to people that you trust along the way. And I think that's the best way that you can approach it. Never lose sight of the moment when you're
Mhm.
trying to, like deliver today. It's good to deliver today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we can get so focused on the end goal or the next step and that we're not yeah, fully present and
Yeah,
giving our all to the moment. I think that's a great
yeah.
point. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I do want to ask some questions students have pre-submitted, kind of like the nitty-gritty questions around getting that first job. I think every time we do one of these alumni office hour sessions, there are questions about how do you get that first job, or how do you like getting the perspective from a hiring manager. What do they look for, and
Yep.
how can you get your resume to the top of the pile? What makes a good resume?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's any insights you can share in that thread, I think that'd be really helpful.
Just as far as the resume was a good one. I look at a lot of resumes. I'll be honest, I find myself having a hard time getting through most of them. I find that we like it's well intentioned what people do, but there's just like trying to like either really overstating or like kind of over describing what you were doing. Like if you're coming in for an entry level job, like it's okay. Like you didn't have to have like saved the world in your previous role or
Yeah.
overscoped what you were responsible for. Like it's okay that you just like your responsibilities were this big. It's okay. I think what's more interesting to me is like how you showcase your educational background, your kind of hobbies, interests, and volunteering that you've got going on. Like that to me is kind of a window into I don't know capacity or like interpersonal skills and like more than the wordy description of what you might have done at your last summer role or yeah. And then as far as like getting in with a hiring, like how do you get in with a hiring manager? Like energy matters. I'll tell you that much. Like there's if you're ever sort of interviewing for these things, they can often be from the interviewer's perspective. They can I've been through some that are great because you just meet fantastic people all day and you're like, this is like these are great problems to have. Like I like all the candidates, they're great energy, they're really fun conversations. I have a hard decision on my hands. Sometimes you meet like it can go the opposite way where it's like just like I don't know kind of low energy and like low like people don't show up with much and it can be a bit of a drag so just kind of energy up for those things like you don't have to be overly eccentric but like if you're
Sure.
getting a hiring manager's attention and time like just make sure you're coming at it with some enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say brevity matters over substance in your resumes. And it's okay if you don't get every single detail of what you did. Like
Mm.
someone's going to probably get, in truth, 60 seconds on your resume, uh, a page flip, and yeah. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess that's a good point too. Like you're what else are like you want to save something for the interview, I guess, as well. You can expand on
yeah,
is not necessarily covered in the resume. It's sort of the highlight reel, I guess, of the top
yeah,
things to know about you. Yeah. And
yeah.
I
I
like
mean, is
that
that
element
in,
of
sorry,
energy.
just for my sake, is that in line with what you're instructing the co-op students to do, or is that
Mm. Um, that's probably a really good question back for Tiffany. I don't know if you want to come on, Tiffany. It's been a while since I was a student and went through the co-op preparatory sort of courses. But yeah, I think when I was a student, oh, there's a couple different structures of how to like answer questions. I think it's the STAR method that we teach the students. But then yeah, I think I was told like no more than a page front to back, like kind of
yeah,
keep it
yeah.
short. But yeah, Tiffany, if you're able to come on, if you want to add anything back, I'd be super curious. Perhaps she might be unable to come on. I think that's probably why
Yeah, no
she's
problem. No, that's okay.
but yeah. And hi, Russell. I see you just came on camera. Do you have a
Hi.
question you'd like to ask?
I think I could just answer on that part for what they teach us co-op
Oh yeah,
students.
Sure.
sure.
Yeah,
Um, I'm just to introduce, I'm Russell Cole. I'm in third year of planning right now. And the thing about at least what they teach us the Career Center is they do teach us brevity, but then I don't know, they don't go into too much depth into it. They just say, oh, keep it short.
yeah,
But it would help a lot more if they did like give pointers on, oh, don't write full on sentences in the bullet points. Like I had to learn that the hard way also, but also I went to other people who gave me those comments. So I'm not
Mhm.
saying that they aren't giving good advice. It's just that, they could do a better job of saying brevity over substance, I think.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for
Yep.
sharing that. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And I don't know, Russell, if you've ever taken advantage of the resume critique what's the word, services that the co-op team has. But yeah, for any students on the call still, the co-op team, you can have mock interviews and get your resume and cover letter looked at. So definitely a service that you can take advantage of and probably should, for adding that context. Yeah, looking at some of the other questions. Oh, I also wanted to say in response to your point, Andrew, about energy. Yeah, I've heard that a lot from other alums as well. And it can be so hard, right?
Yeah.
To be confident and bring the energy when you're nervous for that job.
Yeah.
So how have you practiced in the past to be ready for interviews? I guess it's probably been a while since maybe
It
you've
has been a
been
while.
through
Yeah.
the interview process, but
Yeah. Well, it's funny you asked. Like, I had I'm careful. I actually had interviewed for another job outside of the organization a couple weeks ago. It's the first time I've had an interview in probably 12 years.
wow.
So even I was really unsure of what to do going into this because every interview that I'd had had always been sort of for like I don't know, kind of like very entry level jobs or like kind of like a like middle management job. But a lot of the time I just got promoted. Like, oh, Andrew,
Yeah.
you want to do this job now? Okay. So but I did kind of take some of that advice. Like the resume that I made is really simple. It's like it's one page. I did not spend a ton of time I called out a couple big accomplishments and tried to capture the scale of what I'm responsible for, but I didn't, I saved it for the conversation. And yeah, and I showed up. I just tried to be as authentic as I could be. Like I was just myself. I thought if they don't like me for who I am, then
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm in a good place too. So uh, yeah,
No, that's a really great point too. I something that I try and tell my friends as well is that and I hopefully students on the call have heard this before too, but thinking of an interview as it's a two-way street, a two-way interview, and not oh, I really hope that they give me the job and giving the sort of interview panel all the power. Like it's also about you figuring out whether this is a place that you want to work for and people
yeah,
you want to work with. And I think
yeah.
that can help kind of not fully equalize the field, but just yeah, kind of give you some of your power back, I think,
It
too.
does, yeah. It does. And like if I could critique myself, like I think one of the things I did for that is I probably didn't come prepared enough with questions for them.
Right.
But because a lot of the times the questions that you ask will inform the interviewers of your thinking capacities, your perspective, and kind of how much homework you've done on the organization. So I certainly had some questions, like I've done this enough to know, but as I was, like, I had sort of like kind of a couple big ones that I had gapped on asking, and was so so yeah.
And see, folks, even no matter what stage you're at, you can have those moments where you're like, oh well, I could have done better there, or but that's such a skill to exercise, and I appreciate your vulnerability. Um, yes, and such a great point about the questions and questions you ask as a student looking for those jobs it is just another layer of being able to demonstrate your skills and some of that personality and what you care about and preparedness. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or raise hands, but I thought it might be kind of a fun place to end off on because we're nearing that hour mark of to just to use the to use the slang that the kids are using to yap about a memorable project that you've worked on. If you have like if there was I don't know, a key moment, a project that you think back on and you really enjoyed the process, or maybe you learned a lot from it, or something that makes you feel really proud. Yeah, this is feel free to yap about it.
Yeah, okay. Uh, I probably 3 or 4 years ago, I wasn't, I think my job title was like construction manager or something, and I got pulled into a like it's kind of it's on the surface it sounds really boring, but we had like a new ERP brought into the business, like a new system like a business management tool, enterprise resource tool, and it had all kinds of construction scheduling and construction task management and construction payment tools built into it. And I was asked to take the lead for the Toronto business to sort of understand the tool, integrate it with the existing operations, and then make it standard operating procedure. And it was a bit like it was it was this really cool like kind of marriage of like what I knew from my time on the job site and what I was learning about the business and how it needed to govern itself, and putting those two things together. And I've you know, I leverage, it's really cool now, sort of 4 years later, like I leverage all that work constantly to keep my arms around like as much construction activity as we have. Like we've kind of taken it like to far play. Like I've got like dynamic dashboards, and I've got like really good visibility from my desktop of sort of everything going on in the field. And it's all stuff that I got to sort of start from a blank page with, which is really, really cool. And we built a really cool team around it. And I brought sort of re-envisioned how like construction office sets up now. So we have some more like data analysts on hand, and we've got like a really, I don't know, I've got like a really cool, energetic team that helps kind of keep this thing alive and keep the site information up to date. And yeah, it's a cool, really cool bridge between like operations, technology, financial management, data reporting. Like that's was pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like that's such a nerdy answer.
It's a super nerdy answer. But what it does is it frees, like it's freed me up. It's like if you do tech right, it can make your life easier. If you do tech wrong, it makes your life so much worse. So
Well, and that's a really great project to have gotten to work on. And I know that bringing new tools into a workplace and getting people on board and using it and getting it to a place where it does, yeah, like it has created efficiencies. That can be really hard. Like organizations, typically, it's change is difficult.
yeah,
Change is
there's lots of
slow.
resistance. It's
Yeah.
always things, and yeah. So
And then now to kind of have come out the other end and see it succeeding. That's really, really cool. Amazing. Well, we're coming up on 11 o'clock. For the remaining folks on the chat, thank you for sticking around. If you have any burning questions that we haven't gotten to, now is your chance. Yeah, you have the floor. Students that weren't able to join today, we did record the session, so we'll be sharing it with the registrants so that they can also take advantage of your wisdom. Russell, yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's just like a personal thing. Like, would you rather choose to work with a smaller team or with like a much larger team? Because that's something I always ask myself during co-ops. Like, my only experience has been with smaller teams, and
yeah,
I've really enjoyed how easy it is to communicate with everyone.
yeah.
But then I'm just wondering if, like, working in a larger team just changed the dynamic so much that it won't be as enjoyable. So that's my thing.
I think if you've got the choice, I would try and get myself into a bigger outfit, like with a bigger team. Like what I would say is that regardless of the size of the organization, the team sizes themselves generally end up being pretty consistent. Like there is sort of a scale of a team where things kind of start to break down. Like your direct interactions are usually going to be somewhere like they're going to be like 5 to 8 people, probably. But if you're working for a bigger outfit, the network's a little bit bigger and the complexity is a little bit more. And I think the opportunity for yourself to get your foot in the door is better. So that's my perspective. You could also like find yourself in like a really like niche place. Like you said, you're in planning, right? What you
Yeah.
said? Yeah, like you could find yourself like with a really like niche firm, like very boutique that's doing like cool work. And if you fit onto that, like it could be incredible. So
Well, I see your point though. Like I think bigger outfits do like encourage growth. So it does seem like a good choice to try and out of these, right? So yeah.
yeah, especially earlier in your career, like you can always kind of go. It's easier to go back. It's easier to go small than it is to go big, I guess.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Even in my experience when I was a student, that's such a great question, Russell, because that was something that I was also asking myself. If students have a chance to go work internationally, I highly recommend. It's a really great
yeah,
opportunity. We've got lots of great opportunities at Waterloo, through Beyond Borders, through St. Jerome's, or co-ops. Like we have lots of international co-ops or study abroads. But I worked for a small NGO in Guatemala, and that was such a helpful opportunity for me to realize, wow, like when you're working on a small but mighty team, there's great opportunity to often have to wear many hats and just kind of jump in and put out fires and work on things that maybe you're a little bit outside of your portfolio. And if you were on a bigger team, you'd be a bit more siloed. Yeah, it helped me really realize that I wanted to be within a larger institution with more supports, and that led me back to Waterloo. So yeah, if you have the opportunity, I would say get experience in both worlds.
yeah.
Thanks for that
For your
question.
advice. That's really good advice from you, Lana, and you, Andrew. Thanks for that.
You know.
All right. Well, we're at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us, folks, and thank you, Andrew, for giving your time today. And I know I appreciated hearing your story and hearing your pieces of advice and the bumps along the way, the sort of the humble moments. And I hope you did too as well. Yeah, if this was your first time attending an alumni office hour, we do these every single term, and we do 5 to 6 a term. We've got some more coming up later in November, so keep your eyes peeled. You can go on to the environment events website. We post about it on our socials, and you will also see some emails in your inbox about it. So come out to the next one, share it with your friends, and the session will be recorded, so you can come back and watch it again. So thank you so much. Andrew, is there any last things that you wanted to share with the group, where they can find you, that kind of thing?
Yeah, if anyone wants to find me, I have a LinkedIn account. I mentioned to Lana a while ago, I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but I do check it. But I think otherwise, probably the best way to get me is through my email address, which I think Lana can share. But it's just my name at anatomycorp.com. But other than just like, sort of thank you, like this has been kind of a cool experience. If it's kind of nice every now and again to take a little pause and have a little reflection on what you've been up to and how you got there, and the journey's got a long road on it still. So yeah, it never stops, guys. It's it doesn't feel a whole lot different at 40 than it did at 24. So
I love that. Yes, it's still a journey.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording.